You're supposed to do all that. Oh.
Know that you already, as you get older, you already have these types of issues, right?
Yes. Oh, he just started the live stream.
Yeah, okay. Should be up now.
Hey.
Hey.
How y'all doing?
We are doing great. How are you?
Good. I see Soul's in the same type of headspace that I was just in about 15 minutes ago, and then I realized there were too many sounds going on outside. I was like, and my laptop was about to die. So I was like, nah, I gotta charge it. Good to see y'all.
Yeah, I am gonna turn, so we should be good. So I am not going to watch the Facebook, so, and we are live, I do believe.
I'll handle the live
so,
as soon as I find a good position to be in.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Just so that you guys know, we chit-chat a little bit before we get things started, and let some folks come on in here and give our other group members a chance to come on in. So how is everybody doing?
Doing well.
Very good.
Yeah.
I just got back from the park, so I'm glowing on that right now. Very good time. Everybody seemed to be out and enjoying the weather, which was quite a nice sight to see. So definitely riding that wave.
Yeah, I think that we are definitely moving. It's gonna be pretty warm for the rest of the week, actually. So pretty excited about that.
Mo, I don't think we've met before. How should I address you?
We have not. Mo is, look,
Mo.
got it already. Mo is perfect.
Cool.
Yes, nice
all right.
To meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Bailey.
Good. Meet you.
Hey, Dawn, I don't know if you've ever thought about doing this, but you can make a post public, like able to be publicly shared on Facebook. And I think that making those posts public, like just the reminder for everyone who wants to join the Zoom, we wanted to like expand upon that and get more people in here than who's in the group, which I understand like boundaries and parameters of that nature. But like if you wanted to bring more people in to at least like be a part of the discussion at some point, then definitely make some of those posts shareable, because I was actually looking to share it on my personal Facebook, but there was not the option to do that. But I also don't think that
Soul does it. Soul streams it to his page. I believe he does.
But they don't show up on your page when I post them, is what he means.
Yeah, only because I don't because nobody can post on my page. You can tag me and I can feed it into my page. But I'm really careful about who tags, who can go right to my page and post, because people are insane. I think our last person is coming in. So did I say insane? I didn't mean that in a horrible way. But you know, sometimes people take liberties with your page. And because I also do a lot of mentoring and stuff, I have to be careful. I can't have people just
100%. That's why I said like so long as we include the boundaries. That boundaries are most important.
Well, we're hoping that the weather's breaking a little bit and we can do some on some live shows. What am I trying to say? So
some live events type things.
Some live events where we can have audiences. That was the initial thought behind this. And of course, COVID drove us into this virtual space. Hello, Natasha.
Sorry about
So we'll
that.
definitely have it where we can discuss. Zoom is so hard to manage when you've got a lot of people in the Zoom, but it's been really good in terms of people discussing. That's why we have someone monitoring Facebook, because we always have people come in and they're leaving information. Leaving posts and things during the live broadcast as well. So, but yeah, definitely something to think about. We may do it on an invite basis.
That's a good idea.
So
Yeah.
we can keep a small group, because I think if you've got 30 people in a Zoom, it's a bit much.
I agree. And yeah,
But we'll be on location soon, guys. Hey guys. I know y'all like, do they know that they're talking and we're watching them? Yes, of course we do. But you guys know how we do. We come in very casual. So welcome to the Back to Love movement. The March 21st, 2021 podcast. And I am just going to introduce what we're talking about, and I'll give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. Today's podcast is about generational health. And I'll explain what that is from our perspective, with sort of a term we came up with, and where it came from after everyone introduces themselves. So my name is Dawn. My artsy friends call me Wisdom. And I am co-founder of the Back to Love movement, my brainchild, but certainly not my baby. I have Mo on my screen next, so we'll start with Mo.
I'm Mo Poetry. I am the co-founder of Regal Rhythms Poetry and Hit the Mic Cincy. Also, I am a poetry group facilitator through Women Writing for a Change.
Yes, and this is Mo's first time joining us on a podcast. She has been in the group unofficially, in the group, but official with us for just about a couple of months, not a whole 2 months just yet. So we are very glad that she decided to join. This is what I sort of call the executive board, so to speak. We're the ones who sort of brainchild the ideas that we're talking about. And then I have Mr. Bailey is on the screen next.
Cool. Hey, y'all. My name is Bailey. I'm a musician, artist from Cincinnati, and I joined the movement. And this is also my first podcast. So I feel very grateful to be here. But my primary reason for joining was because I was obviously very moved by the events that transpired last year. So I wanted to educate myself more, acquire more perspective, and use that to cultivate more information to disseminate to other people that can benefit from that. So I'm here trying to have a good conversation in a nutshell.
Excellent. I think something he said was really important. He said he is here to educate himself, as we all are. But oftentimes, you have people that say, educate me, you know what I mean? And it's like, yo, that's not our job to educate you. You know, our job is to provide information for you to educate yourself. So I love that. Thank you so much, Mr. Bailey. And then Natasha, you feeling okay, sis?
Yeah.
Smile or something.
Girl.
Don't let me smile with the biggest smile on here. Y'all know it takes over my whole face.
Oh, I'm next. Okay. I'm Natasha. By trade, I'm a nurse. I work in internal medicine, and I'm an artist. I sing, and I'm interested to see what kind of musician you are, Bailey. So we'll have to talk and stuff. But yes, I became a part of, this was actually Back to Love, because this was actually like right on time for me, because, you know, sometimes you spiritually have these conversations with yourselves, and these private conversations, you're like, man, I feel like Bailey said, the climate of what happened in 2020 and even 2019 and back, and you're like, man, I want to be a part of a change. my community. So this ideal that Don came up with and presented to us was just right on time for me. So today's topic is very special to me because I'm on my own health journey and stuff. You know, there's peaks and valleys. And I tell people it's a marathon, not a race. You got to take it one day at a time. And you have to keep in mind that you have to undo behaviors and a mentality that has like been passed down from generation to generation. And cultivated just by different means, whether it's, you know, monetary wise, because eating healthy is a little more costly, but it is doable if you know the resources to go by, which purchasing your produce and stuff like that. So I'm all for learning as well this evening. So that's a little bit about myself.
All right, and Miss Soul.
Y'all already know who I am. Who doesn't know? I am Soul. I'm a hip hop artist, writer, musician extraordinaire, promoter, collaborator. All in all, just great guy. I'm here to educate as well as educate myself. I'm finding the more and more I do these podcasts, the more I ask deeper questions I already ask myself, and then see the differences and similarities in all of us. So I'm just part of the community, doing something in the community for the community. That's all. That's all it is.
Yes. So of course, we have to start by putting a bit of a disclaimer out. Okay. A lot of the stuff that we bring to you, we have researched. Myself and Soul put this podcast together in terms of the outline and the information that we wanted to present. There are always a couple of members who take a podcast and put the outline together and the information and do the research for the podcast. These are our personal feelings about things. We invite discussion. We are not attempting to tell people how to live. We are attempting to provide navigational tools for whatever road it is that you are on in terms of bettering yourself and your community and your neighbors and your family. We are an information podcast. And I think that's important to say. Because a lot of times people offer information to make you feel a little bit less than they are for not knowing something that they know. And that is not the case for us. It is not the effort. Nothing in that dictates love. And we are, after all, back to love. So let me tell you guys how this idea of generational health came up in my head. And initially, I called it generational health is generational wealth. So it came from two places. I read Ice Cube's Platinum Plan over and over again since I think it hit the scene in the November, December. And I've read it a number of times, really looking for what it was he was trying to get to. And he talked mainly about, I would say predominantly, almost solely about economics and generational wealth, and sort of related that to being our road to liberation. And I don't disagree with that. Oftentimes in our community, we talk about Black businesses and we talk about chasing the bag, and all of that is a wonderful thing. But it got me to thinking why we never talk about passing down generational health.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it is just as important in our sustainability as economics. The richest people in the world are not the healthiest people in the world.
Yep.
And for us, sustainability has to also equal life and not just money. And one does not equal the other. They are not synonymous to one another. So This podcast is about generational health and how we can begin to pass down ways for us to be more healthy in mind, body, and spirit. So the first thing that Soul and I talked about was wellness and what wellness is. And we decided or defined wellness as balance. Soul actually came up with the definition. Sometimes I'm so impressed with this young brother, I don't even know how to articulate it sometimes, but excuse me, he defined balance as leveraging limitations and focusing strengths where they are most needed, finding a well-rounded harmony of your spiritual, mental, physical, and spiritual rooms, right? Some of the things that we came up with in terms of what contributes to wellness are things like sense of thriving, peace, attitude, understanding, gratification, being present, coming to terms with yourself, biological instincts, cultural identity, healthy socialization, security, environment, acknowledging psychological security and domains, and releasing spiritual machinery. So do any of my colleagues want to talk about any of those things or add to that list in terms of wellness? What defines wellness for you?
If I may, I personally have been on this like multi-year journey of like understanding that balance, like you define it, and like wellness is balance. It's kind of crazy that like you define it that way, because that's essentially the synopsis and conclusion that I've come to over the past year, because I used to be completely mindless and like just destroying my body, not taking care of myself, and just like taking and not giving anything away. And like through my own personal investigation into like that line of thought, that's definitely like where I've come to, you know, a fairly decent conclusion as to like what that is. For me, it's more personalized, and like the pendulum is from health to desire, and where you lie within that pendulum kind of dictates your balance. Because as somebody that was, you know, struggling with substance use and abuse and other various types of addictions, because we live in a tempting world, in a society that is conducive to that type of mindless consumption, it was very powerful and pretty profound to like come into contact with somebody a couple years ago that like really outlined the framework of like that pendulum, where it was like, where if you can balance the desires between health and desire, then you find a sense of peace, or at least stability. I would say that like if you find the balance, that's also defined as stability or wellness, which I think is just as comparable definition. But that's kind of like what I have to expound on that, because that's definitely something that I've been working on for a long time, is just like understanding what wellness is and finding the balance between different temptations that we have or that we've cultivated over time. Because it's hard. It's like so hard when we live in such a tempting society to like deter yourself from engaging in that type of mindless consumption behavior constantly, because it's easy, and especially because there's so much pain and suffering happening in this world felt by everybody collectively. Like it's hard to remove ourselves from that healthily when there are so many things that we can lean on to take ourselves away from that, and, you know, remove the overt feelings that we feel when reacting to those types of scenarios of discomfort or distress. So yeah.
Well, consumption feels good.
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so when you are any bad place, you tend to want to consume things that make you feel better. And it may not always necessarily be things like drugs or food or shopping. Sometimes it is, your silly TV shows, So I think when we talk about consuming, I think the root word is to be consumed, right? And I think that wellness and balance requires us not to be consumed by anything.
Yeah.
By absolutely nothing.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I think we talked about that when we talked about we had the relationship podcast, the being consumed with the need to attach yourself to somebody. While the attachment may feel good, trying to get that attachment will sometimes take you down roads, that are not good roads. It doesn't always help you make the best decisions. So Natasha has said something, and I'm calling on you because at one of our podcasts, we were talking about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the base need is food, air, health. Like that's your base need, right? And I always looked at the pyramid as almost in silos and not as something that is built upon. So if the first level isn't achieved, then getting to that next level in terms of success and belonging, and then that next level of belonging and intimacy, and then that, next level of esteem, you can't even rise to those levels if your base level hasn't been achieved. So I think Natasha explained it a little bit better. So I'm going to actually let her jump in if she wants to. But yeah, it was an interesting, I only calling you because I thought it was a really interesting perspective about something we all know about.
I think when it comes to wellness and balance, I think especially in this day and time, what we tend to forget is that our bodies was designed a specific way. And I think we have become so codependent on medicine and the medical field when organically our bodies were designed to survive and to combat anything it should come in contact with, right? That's why we have our immune system. And so I think when it comes to wellness and balance, it's just a matter of getting us into a state of being where our bodies can do its job at the best of its ability. So like Don was saying, as far as Maslow's, what I was saying is in order to reach that next level, you must completely achieve the level at which you are currently. And that's with anything in life. You can't evolve if you don't complete the initial task. So as far as I think temptation in life, I think our problem has been we have all this temptation in life, and a lot of times we get into the temptation because we have no sense of coping mechanisms. Because when we deal with substances, it's because it helps us deal or escape. And when we don't have appropriate coping mechanisms outside of that, then you're right, Bailey, it is easy to get caught up in that. So a part of our wellness and our balance is building ourselves holistically, as Don and Soul pointed out earlier, with mind, body, and spirit. We have to not only, and again, just like Maslow's, you can't be a holistic, healthy person if you're not healthy physically, if you're not healthy mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. All of those are needed in order to be holistically well. So one cannot operate without the other. Sometimes in anatomy, when we think about anatomy, every part of our body is essential. If you cut off your toe, you gonna know your toe was gone because you need that for balance. Our rib cage is help us not only protect those vital organs,
Help
organs,
us
but
stand up.
exactly for support. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Mhm.
like when you lose a piece of yourself, you're out of what we call homeostasis, which is that balance. So I think for me, wellness is getting myself back to the place where my body can naturally do what it was created to do, and that's survive.
Yeah,
Well put.
yeah. Anything you guys want to add, Mo? So,
For me, if I had to pick two, it would be peace and purpose. I think peace is huge for me, especially being a domestic violence survivor. Coming out of that, I promised myself and my son a peaceful life. Like I literally made a vow. I stood in the room and said, as of this day, you know, I am promising myself a peaceful life. And that means at the cost of whether or not I would be in another relationship, um, whether or not I had to sacrifice some things in life, whatever that meant, whatever that looked like for me, if it was things that I had to give up, if it was jobs, whatever, family even. If you jeopardize my peace in any way, you know, you're on the cutting board at that point. And I'm not the one that's gonna get cut. You're going to get cut because it is that important to me. I know what it's like to be in that frame of mind where you're just not at peace and you're just tormented. So that's very big for me. And then purpose is also big. I know we'll talk about health and my actual condition stuff later. But for me, this has been a hard year, finding out a lot of conditions and things that I have. I have lupus. But now that I'm diagnosed and going through a lot of things with that, I think it just, my focus on purpose has even emerged even more. It's like if I was not focused on my purpose and being driven that, okay, I have a certain calling, I have people that I have to get a message to, certain things I have to do with my life before I check out of here, that I just would not be able to, I wouldn't be able to function. I wouldn't have been able to make it and transition from working in my bed all morning long to put on some clothes and make it to be here on this podcast right now. And especially with people with chronic illness, I think purpose is major, that you find that something in them that says, I do have a purpose. Despite all this going on back here, there's a reason why. So that would be my two.
I agree with you, Mo, in terms of purpose. Sometimes I think we can have traumatic experiences, whether they are personal experiences, something that has personally happened to us, or they could be things that we observe, personal experience or experiences that we've seen people have. And I lost my mother at the age of 19. And she was 38 years old. I spent probably the next 3 years mourning her and didn't know that I was mourning her. And I felt like I was running towards something, but I felt like I had to hurry up and live, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. Because what if I didn't see 38? Or what if I didn't make it past 38? So I spent the first 3 to 4 years after she passed, literally trying to do everything fast. Finish school, have a career, buy a house. I mean, I literally, like, everything that I thought she didn't have, that she died without, I spent the first 4. And what I realized is that I was chasing purpose, but I wasn't doing purposefully. if that I was chasing purpose, but I wasn't doing it on purpose.
It sounds like you were building a foundation to fulfill a purpose afterwards, in a way.
I think I was, but I think until I don't know until I really understood what purpose was, that I could fully understand that that's what I had been doing for those 4 years. And once I was able to focus again and slow down, and mind you, I was raising a 12-year-old. I had a 12-year-old brother. So I was a full adult at 19. But I didn't feel like a full adult, you know. I was just trying to hurry up and outlive 38 years old before I got there. So it may have been moving towards a purpose, but I had no idea that's what was happening. So I think we have to be present. And that's one of the things that stands out for me in that list of things, is that we have to be present in our lives so that we can understand how and why we are moving. Or we may not even understand that we are moving towards a purpose. My brother texts me every morning and he says, "Have a blessed day on purpose." And I thought it was probably one of the most powerful things I had ever read. He shocks me sometimes too. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about healthy socialization and environment. But those things, I think, particularly in the Black community, are things that affect our balance. And sometimes they are not things that we can control. So we'll definitely get to those. Yes, Natasha. And I want to make sure Soul has a chance to jump in if he had something to say. I want him to explain releasing spiritual machinery, because that was specific to him. So go ahead, Natasha.
I think one of the things that we tend to do as in terms of generational factors is we carry the, when we become mindful or in the knowledge of knowing what conditions or diseases we're predisposed or even more likely to acquire because of our familial background, is that we tend to like carry that. So like, for instance, for me at this point of my life, my focus on my health has nothing to do with what I'm trying to look like physically. It has everything to do with the state of my parents at this point. And so in my mind is when I get to my 70s, I don't want to be sick. I want to be as well as I can be, you know. So when you were,
because physical health is next, and that is something we cover heavy in physical health. So, but go ahead, finish your thought.
But I was just saying, when you were talking about your mom, I think what it is that this time clock came on for you. So it was just like, even though we speak in terms of purpose, we also think about time, because that is one of the things that we are most uncertain of. So it's like, okay, I only have, like, when someone dies that's close to you, you begin to think about your life in a whole different way. So you're like, I only have so much time. And we don't even know how much time we have. We can live another 60, 70 years, but we focus and fixate on that time. So that's that urgency of, I got to get this done. I got to do this. I got to experience this. I got to do this for this person, do that, because we don't know what time means for us. So that's what I think plays into our mind too.
Yeah. I mean, just to mention, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer at 32 years old. And then by the time she was 38, it had metastasized in her liver. She eventually died from liver cancer at 38 years old. And so it wasn't just trying to hurry up, outlive 38. I was trying to outlive cancer. But it was so much I didn't, you know, once I decided that I needed to learn more about it and how to be preventive, then I wasn't as fearful of it. But it took about 4 years for me to actually like settle down. And I'm gonna tell you something about growing up at 19. At 30, I went out and got a life. It was not a good life, but we're gonna leave that there and we're gonna talk about that time issue when you move too fast through time, you know what I mean? And you think that you've lived most of your life, the best parts of your life before a certain age. Once you realize that, oh, I'm 30, then you realize, yeah, I did a lot of things at 30. I probably should have been doing at 19.
Right.
To be honest, but we ain't gonna talk about that. So can you explain briefly for us and quickly releasing spiritual machinery? Because you specifically came up with that and I wasn't 100% sure what that meant.
I want to quickly chime in real quick. When you was talking about time, it kind of made me feel kind of like the grass is greener on the other side a little bit. And you kind of have to appreciate your greenery, because I definitely don't understand time as well as I feel like a balanced, well human being should. That I realize that the way I move now is like I don't have the concept of really hurrying, and that bothers me sometimes. And to add on to what everybody else was talking about, and I think the thing that speaks out of me is attitude, because yeah, all these things might not be, your health might be down, your mental might not be the best, your spiritual walk is not where you want it to be, your emotional health. Mainly, it comes down to the attitude of some days you have bad days, some days you have good. But regardless, am I still here to see it through? And so I think that's a core identity of wellness, is a certain attitude of still trying, getting up every day and still trying every second. But to elaborate on the day that I was working on this, I was talking to a friend who was talking about God and spirituality, atheism, um, and what our different beliefs was. And I realized that my spiritual walk has been the same mechanism, just different coverings. So I was raised in a Christian home. So a lot of the mechanics that they taught me, I realized I carried on to other belief systems in an attempt to run away from the stuff that I did not. So I wouldn't call myself an atheist, but my attitude was very atheist. And then I moved from atheism to uh, a form of Egyptian masonry a little bit. Then I moved into just spirituality, and then I moved into another belief system, and now I'm just me. But I noticed certain patterns that I have for myself from that upbringing. I was just repeating the same behaviors, patterns. I was just trying to act like I knew everything. I was trying to act like I have it down packed for me, because the reality is I didn't know what to believe. When you're raised a certain way, you're supposed to believe this certain way, and you find out the creaks and cracks and how it's a lie to you. That's a very scary place. So I was running, in a sense, what you said, Don, trying to find purpose, but not purposefully looking for purpose. So the reason why I wrote that is we have to stop. We need to cut the bondage, as someone says to me all the time. What is bondage? What I mean by bondage is ways of thinking, ways of thought patterns. It's like, why is it really a problem? And I'm just gonna put this out there because that's this is the first thing that comes to mind. Why is it that we worry so much about wearing clothes when we were made as we are? A human created the concept of clothes, and they were ashamed to believe that our bodies are ugly or profane and must be covered up. Why? So you're telling me that's basically telling me that something is wrong with me from the get-go since I was born. So certain examples of that we still carry on. We try to say we don't believe in God or don't do this, but you're still doing the same patterns. It's just a different tool. So examining ways that we carry on from religion into spirituality and going with that attitude, as you mentioned earlier, just to say that I know. When really you only know so much about what you've gone through, and not so much trying to help people.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I'm gonna tell you what's most interesting about the introduction to this whole thing, because we literally just had an introductory conversation. Everybody here touched on some other part, which is why we started with what wellness is, touched on some other part of the rest of this podcast. So some of these things you guys are going to hear sort of expounded on as we move through. And this is what I want to take a quick break here just for a moment and say, we collectively come together once a month and talk about what we're going to do for the next month. If there are things that you guys have questions about, stuff that you would like to discuss, stuff that you would like to bring to this platform, and I'm talking about our Facebook friends out there in social media world, and you are friends with one of us, personal friends with one of us, or even in the Facebook group, the Back to Love Movement group, feel free to post that there, and we'll explore it and figure out if there are ways that we can bring that information to the platform. Because sometimes you have ideas and things you want to talk about, or just questions, and you like I think Natasha said in the beginning, is like, am I the only one who thinks this way, kind of thing. So no, feel free. And I meant to say that at the previous podcast. So by all means, please let us know if there are things that you want to sort of bring to this platform. We will certainly try to bring them and help you unpack some of the things that you are dealing with. So
Can I say
of
one
course,
thing? Can I say one
Face
thing?
shout out to the chat too.
Say what?
I was
I
gonna say
just
that.
want, oh, go ahead.
That's one thing about Zoom. That's just the one thing is, but we make it happen though. Shouts out to Mike Rogers. He says, I'm healing. He was the first person that got on live. Shout out to David. He's looking forward to more information. Maya GBD says, hi, family. Ty Stuckey is in the building after hiding for so many eons. And then Napoleon says, the sense of needing to achieve what our ancestors didn't achieve is so powerful.
Oh, wow.
So I would say to expand on what he said to you, I would say to expand on what he said to you is, it may have looked torturous for you on the inside, but to the outside is like, she's going some places. That is inspiring to me, because I saw a meme that said they see the success, but they don't see is the failures, the breakups, the no's, the this, that, and the third. So it was still purposeful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think everybody on here are trying to break chains. And make some corrections. Some ancestral connections, or disconnections, or relearning for certain. And you were going to say, Natasha? You were trying
just
to say.
quickly, I know, right? So said something that kind of touched me when he said his struggle with understanding time. I personally believe, I don't think we were meant to understand time. I think we were created to live in each moment and make the best of it. Because when you narrow life down to time, it is so unfulfilling, but we are conditioned to do that. So I think as far as time is, if we would just let go of that concept and just live, we would have a more fulfilled life. I mean, it's all about discovery in life. This is all about a journey. Even when it comes to transforming your health, we set a time, and there's nothing wrong with establishing goals. But when you don't reach that goal in that time, then you give up, or you feel defeated. When you just have to allow the process to be the process, and however long it takes for you to achieve that, it was purpose for that time, because that time is specific to you and what your journey was. We were all created with purpose, but it's up to us to discover what that purpose, and only that happens in time. So just allow that.
Every step in a process is a process in itself.
Right.
I'm gonna say that again. Every step in the process, if it's 12 steps in a process from A to Z, every single step is a process in itself, and we become conditioned with time. Think about it. Think about from birth. Oh, we can't wait until she's 5.
Right.
And we can't wait until she's 12. That's the preteen. Oh, and then 16, and 18 and 20. And then you sort of set yourself to that time, right? Well, the things that you did at 12, you gotta wait. You can't do those things until you are 16, I've been confined by time most of my life, thinking that if I hadn't had these books written by a certain time, that would be too old, until I read that Toni Morrison was 36 years old when she published her first book. Get yourself together. Girl, all right together.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we every 2 weeks we're waiting on a check. Every first of the year we're waiting on our taxes. I'm talking about in terms of increments of time. We live on every single day. We wake up at 5, we eat at 7, we literally, right? And it's okay to have a structure for your life, right? Because time also gives us structure, but not so structured that you are confined by those time limits and those time spaces. Yes, Bailey. And we're going to then move on into our physical health portion. Go ahead.
Cool. I just wanted to elaborate on, I thought that this line of thought is very important, because these are all values that everybody can take from in reference as time progresses, relatively speaking. But over the past couple years, especially the past year, I have been taught by many different people. This is a recurring theme and topic that's been brought up in many conversations. And it's the concept that time is currency, not necessarily something to live your life by, but it's something to use as, I don't know exactly what you want to call it, but I guess if we're going to go by lay people's terms, then we could say it's just a way to show gratitude and to show sincerity, because most people feel like they can show their sincerity strictly based on linguistics and on writing and whatnot. But sometimes your presence is all it really takes for somebody to get the message that you actually care. And I feel like that's invaluable in and of itself. And it's something that it's not a mentally or physically taxing process. It's just about showing up and letting people know that you will dedicate some of your time out of your day to engage in an activity or in an event with them. And that in and of itself breeds fulfillment. And it's a recurring process, and we can really, if we use time as a crutch and as something that defines our life, then we just get immersed and drown in it, if that makes sense. It's hard to do that sometimes, though, because our entire
is what we talked about before, consumption.
Yeah, exactly.
Being overconsumed with time. Spend it. Don't save it. What you saving it for? Spend it.
And don't feel bad about indulge sometimes. That's another thing that I've learned is don't beat yourself up if you feel like you want to let loose for a couple nights. It's do that with your friends too. Go hang out and instead of working for another 4 hours, it's if it's safe to do so, obviously at this point in time, but if you're feeling you need to just step away from your desk and hang out with something, do it, and don't feel bad about it, because you're having an experience, and we have all the time in the world to work. It's how we survive, and unfortunately some people don't have the option to work or not to work, and so when you get that time, it's definitely a privilege, and that's definitely not the way I used to perceive it. So
make the best of your time, because that's the one thing you can't get back.
Nope.
Yeah.
You cannot buy time.
There's a reason why they call it current, and they try to call it currency.
There it is. I'm writing that down, Soul. That's a nice nugget right there.
That's what he does.
some of us on this call, we are in our health journey in terms of our physical health. And just so that you all know, remember we were talking about generational health overall. So we are talking about passing down, sort of breaking the things that have bound us from things that we've been told we should be or how we should be, and sort of breaking those things and starting to pass on healthier notions to our children. And so this is really talking about passing on good physical health to our children and the generations to come. And we know more now. We know more. And let me say, I'm going to start this by saying every culture has health myths that are developed by their dietary habits. Every culture, not just ours, not just Black folks, right? It is present for us because you know, we know we live in food deserts and all those kind of things. But every culture, and I'm watching the special on CNN about Italy, the culture of Italy, and it's attached directly to food. So we're talking about Sicily, Rome, it's, you know, Italy, and it's directly related to food. And believe it or not, we are not culturally the only ones who have passed on poor dietary habits. Okay, so I'm gonna break into this by saying first, in terms of the Black community, since 2007, the death rate has decreased by 17% in our community. That's something to be a part of, right? And they attribute that to more of us being in the middle class. I don't know about that, but we'll see. And also to having better, this is what I read, this is something I read, this is research, I don't know if I believe it, I'm just putting it out there. Mainly they just talked about our economic, the change in our economics, right? But we hear, oh, don't look like that, Natasha. I'm just telling you what the little article I read said. I don't know. But it's interesting to me because our children, even though our life expectancy has increased, right? Our children have more onset adult diseases in their youth. Our communities and a lot of our people, we are living in food deserts. There are lots of food insecurities. We still have a poor access to health care. We still inhabit myths about our strength, right? Overall, that's sort of what lends itself to this sort of idea of poor health, how we're treated in the health, in the medical field. We obviously, I think, have probably still a huge disparity in economics. And we have passed on some dietary habits that don't serve us well. Now, all of this became really prevalent when COVID hit. It became visible, not prevalent, right? The rest of the world was like, wow, I didn't know Black people had it that bad. We like, yeah.
Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
You know, like, yes. And so this whole idea of food insecurities and poor health care, it was like the rest of the world was just figuring out, and COVID sort of brought all of that to the forefront for us. But for us specifically, there is a history of generational dietary habits. I'm gonna put that there, and I'm gonna let you guys take it where you want to go. And in that is tied to comorbidities. Okay, and I'll define what comorbidities are shortly. I used to talk about it all the time, and one day Soul was like, what is comorbidity? I was like, oh, my fault. I thought we knew. So I'll define what that is, but I want to talk about nurture versus nature.
Mhm.
Okay. A lot of times we'll hear things like, I got diabetes because everybody in my family got diabetes. Diabetes is not nature. You ain't got it because your grandmama got it.
Mhm.
You have it because of habits that have been passed on to you, predominantly dietary habits that have. So that's nurture. That doesn't have anything to do with nature. It's not like, oh, all Black people have diabetes. All white people have skin cancer. That's not nature. Like you born on this earth, if you're this color, you're gonna have these type of things. That's just not true. So I'm gonna lay that there really quick on the table. One of the other things we're gonna talk about in this one is natural remedies.
Oh yeah.
And I got some strong opinions about natural remedies, but we're gonna take it there. So I'm just putting kind of all of the stuff out, and we're gonna let the conversation move the way it moves. So we talked about environmental influences. So those are things like food deserts and what a food desert is and all of that. Is there anything that anybody needs something defined of what it is before we move on? A comorbidity, because I was waiting on Soul to ask. It is a condition that coexists with the primary illness. Okay. So specifically in the Black community, things like diabetes. Diabetes would be the primary illness. The comorbidity would be things like kidney disease, hypertension. Those are things that diabetes cause. Heart disease is the primary disease. Conditions would be things like heart failure, high blood pressure, hypertension. So all of those things would be the things that coexist with the primary illness. Okay. Anything else? Oh, in this segment is also our distrust of medical science. And what we're finding out, right, is that Black people ain't the only people that have a distrust of medical science. We all learned some stuff. We all learned some shit about each other in this last year, right? We all did. It's a good thing. All right, so jump on in anywhere you want to go in those areas.
So one of the things.
Go ahead, Natasha.
So one of the things, like as a nurse, that drives me, that I think my patients lack is education. When you come in and your physician tells you, and I'm glad you brought up the condition of diabetes, they tell you you're diabetic. The furthest that I see most people go is just taking their medicine. But diabetes isn't just a condition that acquired because of poor diet. It's a deficiency of a hormonal imbalance via the pancreas. So your pancreas releases insulin. And when your pancreas does not release enough insulin, in your bloodstream builds up glucose. And if that insulin isn't present to break down that glucose, that's a deficiency of a gland, So people just say, oh, they come in, I know I got to get my blood work done, and I've been bad because I've been doing this. Eating right helps the condition, Eating right prevents that increased blood glucose level. You know what I'm saying? So I tell my patients, just don't take your medicine. Know what you're taking, because half people that take their medicine don't know what they're taking, what the side effects are, why they're taking it. Do they have to take it the rest of their lives? Because of course, and I'm just saying this, but of course your practitioner is going to tell you you're going to have to do it the rest of your life. But the truth is, every condition is remissible. It can go into remission.
But you said education. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's so important. And you as a patient, as an individual, you have to be your own health advocate. Because you got to understand we're paid to do a job. And in in American medicine, we are not trained to heal you. We're trained to sustain you. In other parts of the world, they're trained to bring about healing. So you have to, and I learned this even before I became a nurse from Montel Williams. He was diagnosed with MS. And of course, he's a celebrity and, you know, have money and stuff like that. And they were telling him, oh, you know, this is the progression of the disease, and probably 10 to 15 years, you're going to be paralyzed. He was like, no, I'm not. And so he went out and he did research and he did natural medicine. And the man, I mean, like him, people like him, Tamia, I mean, you would never know these people have MS. And MS is a very debilitating condition. But because they were their own health advocate, it is so important for us. Just don't, I mean, even with our mental health, that's why I'm saying, like, coping mechanisms. Don't become so, some of us need medication. I'm not anti-medicine. I'm not. You know, if it's going to get you to a level of stability, fine. But if there is, if your condition is not so far gone that it cannot be reversed, do what is necessary to reverse it. And don't let people.
That's why we're talking about passing on these ideas of different attitudes with our diets and our exercise and what we do to our bodies as young people, where that comes in, it becomes very important. And I think one thing you said that was important was education, right? So it is true. The medical field is in the business of making money. So is every manufacturer who makes natural medicine. They are in the business of making money. And there's no one thing that works for everybody. I don't care if it's over the counter. I don't care if it's prescribed. I don't care if it's CMOS. I don't care if it's none of that. There's no one thing that works for everybody. So the first thing you need to do is know your body. Get a physical. A full workup of your body from head to toe. What is going on inside of my body? And the day that you go into the doctor's office, and I personally attest to this, and they say to you, you on the way to, right? They said to me, my doctor said to me, I was 36 years old, I weighed 200 pounds. He said, in 6 months, you're going to be insulin dependent. And like Montel Williams, I said, guess who? That ain't his name. What's his name? Montel. Yeah. I said, guess who won't be doing that? But what I need you to do is tell me what I can do for myself. Before I come back here in 6 months and you decide you're going to give me something, because I just didn't want to shoot myself with a needle for the rest of my life, okay? And he said to me, he was honest, he was a white man, he said to me, most Black people who come into my office will say, because with diabetes, because that's 89% of the diabetic patients in this country are us, okay? Mm-hmm. Will say, give me the medicine.
Mm-hmm. Don't want to do work, don't want to change the behavior.
And it's a laziness with understanding what you can do to help yourself. So it is, to me, sometimes when I hear this idea of there's this distrust in the medical field, it almost starts to feel like it's an excuse to do nothing. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with that. So he said, are you going to do the work? I said, tell me what I got to, let me try for myself first. And he said, you're going to have to lose weight. You're going to have to start exercising. You're going to have to change your diet. I'm going to send you to a dietitian. We're going to get you on a more regulated diet. We're going to find out what carbs do to your body. So I need you to try some different things. And he went about keto, or paleo, or none of that other bullshit. I mean, stuff. He was literally talking about learning how to retrain my body. We train our hair. We train our nails. We train. And we never talk about training our bodies to do something different. And I'm telling you, that was 7, 8, how old am I? Almost a decade ago. I ain't shot a needle yet. And I don't intend to. So I think there also has to be a shift of mentality, instead of saying, this is just generational for us. This is just what we do. This is what our family has. If that was the case, it's something on all sides of my family. We got heart disease, cancer, diabetes, hypertension. When I'm telling you, we got every disease. I used to tease my parents and say, the least y'all could have did was have a medical workup before y'all started procreating. You gave us no chances here, but it's not true. But we are born to believe that. Don't eat that sugar. It's gonna give you, what we used to call it, sugar diabetes.
Sugar diabetes. But I think too, that generation wasn't as cognizant as we are, wasn't as health conscious as we are, because a lot of our poor practices became our traditions.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
We all watched Soul Food and clapped at the end of the movie, but here this woman was dead and amputated, and on Sundays they were still eating all this crap. That's the one thing about Soul Food I remember the most, the movie. That we were celebrating this woman being in the hospital by eating what put her there. I just thought to myself, this it's got to be the craziest thing. I want Mo to jump in because I know that this was a part of a segment for her that she really wanted to be involved with.
I hope I'm not taking the distrust of the medical science into a totally different realm. But for me, it deals more with the disparities in the African American community. Looking at myself, I've sat in on some lupus seminars and things like that. I've looked at things that were definite triggers that they should have known that this was lupus, that the doctors just missed. Like I would go in for years, I would say, I need a complete blood work. Are you sure you're doing all the blood work? I would be adamant about that. And they would say, yes, we're doing it. No, they were not. They did not test me for lupus. They did not ask me about family history of lupus. I knew that my grandmother's sister had died of lupus. If we would have dug a little further, we would have known that 5 other people within my family on both sides have autoimmune disease. Wow. It's a simple blood test. One side of it says your family has autoimmune, the other side says you have autoimmune. And then from there, you go to a rheumatologist, they run all these tests and say, this is the autoimmune disease that you have. But instead what they did, they said, you keep getting sick. We can't understand the bronchitis. We can't understand the pneumonias. Let's do an AIDS test. But I told them, I was celibate for 11 years during the time when all this was going on. I'm like, that's not my life. Like, I don't know. I mean, not to say, you know what I mean? It could be one person and you could end up with AIDS. But I was like, I don't understand. Why are we going in that direction as opposed to making sure that everything else is not lining up? And it's just, it's so, this whole thing.
That's the pain that we know in this field. That's a real trauma. Yeah, it's a real thing.
So when they tell you, I think the imperative thing is, as a patient, knowing exactly what to ask. So when you come into the doctor's office and you say, I need a full workup, this is typically what they're going to order. They're going to order a CBC, that's a complete blood count. They're going to do a comprehensive metabolic panel. That's going to look at your electrolytes, your kidney function, and your liver enzymes. They'll do a lipid panel, which is your cholesterol. And as you being an African American, they will do an A1C, hemoglobin A1C, in relation to diabetes. That is your workup. In order to get to where you are, you had to go to a specialist, the rheumatologist. You would have had to have a C-reactive protein done and all specialized tests to get to that diagnosis. So I think it's imperative as people, and this is the lack of education, not on your part, but as a community, because let's just be real, they don't want us to know these things, so it's about knowing what actually to ask or what actually to say, because they're only going to tell you so much, because again, they have a job to do. I go to work every day because of my patients. If I had no patients,
the initial ANA, and I don't know if it's RNP, whatever, that comes from your primary doctor. They could have done that, and for years, they never did. Like, they were giving me shots within my cartilage of my heart and everything. it's some type of condition that is an automatic red flag that says, hey, this person is having inflammation in between the cartilage
Like
in here.
pericarditis.
Yes. And that should have been a red flag. That should have been an automatic referral to rheumatology. Never got a referral.
But you know what is interesting though? General practitioners are just that, general practitioners. It's a lot that they really don't know. I work with a general practitioner and he'll be quick to say, I have no idea, but I'll refer you to such and such. It's a guessing game. It's putting the pieces
together. Think about
together.
people who are on CareSource. Guess what they don't have access to? Specialty doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens?
All a part of the plan.
Yeah.
You know, because
and that's a poverty thing, because there is a tremendous amount of people in this country on CareSource. A lot of them don't believe in socialism. I'll be like, yeah, you do. But like, you know what I mean? Like, did you get your stimulus? Hi, socialism. I'm just saying, it's not a bad word. But we a lot of them don't have access. CareSource is basic, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. So in order to go to a specialist, you know, you have to be able. They're not. You can't afford it. Then they, you know, they're not. Your network is very small, you know, in terms of, and like you said, there has to be someone who can advocate for you. But I think that there's been so much distrust for us in the medical industry, and I'm going to say economic. I think across the board there's sort of this distrust of from poor people in general of the medical field, that we begin to then not even trust people that look like us, or people that, you know, everybody. Natasha, I know you're my cousin. You ain't in on the fix, but most of the people are going to look at you and say, you are in on the fix. Y'all all getting rich from it.
No.
What happens, and I'm going to give an opportunity to jump in this. If you all do not know who Dr. Melba Moore is, and Dr. Sharice Wood, I advise you to look them up. They are females in their, the first females in their positions. Again, that is Melba Moore and Sharice Wood, SHARICE Wood, no S on the end. And we just did a panel with them, a town hall with them about the vaccination. We are not talking vaccination today, okay? But we did a panel with them, and they were saying, you know, our doors are open. We took these positions because our doors are open. We'll be advocates for you. I work for an organization that is 98% Black. And do you know that those people on that town hall was like, we ain't asking them nothing. They with them. So what has happened is it has poisoned us to not even, we don't trust anything. We don't trust anything. We don't trust anything that comes out of that. And I think that can be dangerous truth too, because there's truth in everything. There's nothing that we consume that is totally good for us, and nothing that we consume that is totally bad for us. Right. And so there's truth in everything, but we have decided to completely do away with science, just the common sense of science. We attach that to the medical field. And now we've all sort of run to these natural remedies. I'm going to give you some information about natural remedies. Sea moss. That's the big thing now. Sea moss. Sea moss is made of iodine. It's not made of iodine. It has high percentages of iodine in it. And excessive iodine can mess with your thyroid. And Natasha, you can tell me if I'm off. It can create this thing that they call dyslipidemia. So that's too many lipids. It can mess with your body's ability. It can cause inflammation in your intestines and mess with your body's ability to absorb nutrients, right? But what happens is we have to educate ourselves about everything. We have decided that everything about the medical field is wrong. So we run over to this other side. We don't know what's in that shit either. We don't know what's in that shit either. And that's the goddamn truth. I'm sorry. I get passionate about it because it's a little bit, it becomes to the point where we have to figure out, like you said, Natasha, I think being educated and really not going out. We've decided that, and I'm gonna use Dr. Sebi, and don't nobody be cussing words with me about Dr. Sebi, but Dr. Sebi got paid for his work too. Okay. But if Dr. Sebi said it, we don't go to research what he said. We go to find information that confirms what he said. We don't question.
Can I just say this? Some of the things that he says is contradictory. One point is like he say, don't eat this, and then later you research further enough, people like, yeah, eat this. I'll be like, but you just said don't eat that.
He sold books. That was his goal.
This is what I'm saying. And I'm talking in terms of our culture and piggybacking on what you were saying as far as us trusting. We don't trust each other. That is fact. But it's about presentation. And I think you touched a great point when you said the laziness behind it and using it as a crutch, as an excuse for poor behavior, because I think we just brainwashed and whatever. But also, and to just be plain, they won't, like for me, I'm a Black nurse. Ain't nothing changed in that. If I come, unless I have developed a rapport with my patients, they'll wait on my white counterpart to tell them the same thing. They trust the presentation of a Black man who basically, the reason why people trusted Dr. Sebi, because it gave them a sense of, identity, because what he was talking about was specific for our culture. And because we are a culture who has been stripped so much of our identity, he was speaking in terms of nutrition, that we as Africans living in America have a specific innate diet. Like when you go back in Africa, you won't find certain things that we have put into our diet. So the thing with Dr. Sebi was, it was not only a sense, it was more so for me, and especially with Black men, they really jumped on it because he gave us a sense of, oh, this is who we are. This is what we're supposed to do. This is for us as Black people, and he was talking about healing. No. It's
not that he didn't have some things. I'm saying question everything.
But what
just
but I
because it
just
says
said,
natural,
but what I just said was a lot of the things, because I followed him myself because I was interested in a lot of the natural remedies that he was saying, and that he proved through his herbalist ways of doing things that he did reverse and heal some conditions. I mean, he went before this.
He was using natural herbs, though. He was using, he had access to things in the natural form. So what happens is, though, we think that the vitamin D, right? And I'm gonna use vitamin D and zinc because when COVID happened, everybody ran out and got vitamin D and zinc, right? So then this vaccine comes up, and I don't want to talk about the vaccine. That's not what I'm talking about. And they started reading the ingredients that are in the vaccine, right? Y'all do know some of those same ingredients are in the vitamin D and zinc that y'all bought over the counter. And that's all I'm saying is, don't assume that because it says natural, that somehow it is more valid than science. I think there is a balance between the two, and that if we do not choose to try to find that balance, then what we are really doing is being lazy and just saying, our excuse is gonna be they don't care anything about us. Those things are not synonymous to me. They don't have to care about us for us to be able to read and discern and comprehend. That just
goes
doesn't
back
have
to
to
me
be the
saying
truth. And I
that we're
don't want to.
codependent. We're
Yeah.
codependent as patients.
Mhm.
We go to the doctor as so many times, and like I said, it's a process. But we think that doctors have a magic wand and we can just, cure and do. No, they're like a tool to get
Yeah.
down what's going on,
Yeah.
but you have to do the work. And so many times I have to sit and talk to my patients, be like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. I'm not taking my medicine. So why are you here? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm not trying to be funny, but if you're not going to do the work, if you're not going to take your medicine, if you're not going to change your diet, why are you wasting your time? Because it's the same outcome,
Even with working out right now, Tasha, it is, and I don't know if you experienced this. I trained for a little while. I don't anymore, sisters. Sisters, y'all threw me off. I don't want to ever train again in my life. I'm never gonna do that. I'm sorry. Okay. Hold on. So I'm just gonna say this, and I'm gonna let
still
Salt and
make those
Bailey jump in
videos
here.
though. You can
I
still
do
make those
want to do
videos.
some videos to show y'all different things y'all can do. I'm really into strength training and all that stuff now. But I decided to stop training because we have also attached health to body image.
Mhm.
And sisters came into the gym, and it's just sisters. I'm just saying my experience
Makeup.
was, and all they wanted to do was work on their booties. No lie.
And
When I would say,
waistline.
how's your diet? Let's talk about a diet. Let's put together a plan for your eating. You know what I mean? We're gonna do some core work today. Now today we're gonna run with some cardio. We got to build our legs, our back, and our shoulders. Your back is a part of your core. It is actually instrumental in this fitness world. You have to have a strong back. Everything else becomes easy. They didn't want to do nothing. That they wanted to do squats. They wanted to walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes, do squats, do the little hip abductor machine, and out. I couldn't watch. I was so confused. I didn't know what was happening. But we have attached health to the way we look. And I think it was important that Natasha said that this is not a journey of aesthetics. The aesthetics are going to come. Quite frankly, I'm gonna tell you how to get a bigger booty. But first, I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you real quick, and I'm gonna tell you. First of all, you ain't gonna get what you don't have. Exercise don't change your bone structure. Be clear, okay? And I'm gonna tell you what I mean. When I came to the gym, I was like, "Oh, I'm about to get hips." My trainer was like, "Oh, no, you not." I don't have hips. That ain't what I got. You know what I mean? I don't have those things right here. I don't have hips, right? But you know, developed hips. You know how I developed hips? I shrunk my waistline. So what you can absolutely believe is 95% of your aesthetic starts in the kitchen.
Oh, yes.
Period. Strength training for your core is ultimate. And the smaller your waistline get, the bigger everything else is. All right, Bailey. So anybody wanna, I'm telling y'all that because it's difficult to work with people who come into the gym and want a look. And I'm like, boo-boo, you have an athletic build, you don't have a curvy build. But here's how we can give you a notion of what you're trying to look like. I don't want to do that. My neck hurt. We ain't even doing nothing with your neck. Okay. I'm done. I'm done. Bailey. So Bailey had his hand up. Go ahead, man.
I have so much to add to what everybody just said. First, I want to elaborate on the comment that you just made, Dawn, because society informs what is determined to be an appropriate body image, correct? So it's like if we remove ourselves from that thought of what is an appropriate or attractive, appealing body image, then we're already like where we're supposed to be, because there's nothing to reference there. It's like, yes, it's good to take care of yourself. I feel like that is more beautiful than any body image or shape that you can have, because you know that you're taking care of yourself. And if you're taking care of yourself and you know that you're taking care of yourself, then you and people around you will appreciate that, because they'll see it. It's like when I go over to Darius and Previn's house and we're cooking a vegan meal that we put time and effort into, it's like, yeah, we're all having a good time, and we don't care how we look while we do it. It's like, it's great. I know it's a little different for like the female perspective, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of baggage on that. But you know, it's one of those things where I also this is kind of elaborating on the generational aspect of it. It's like, in regards to you know, past generations, they didn't have the internet, and a lot of them had, you know, home cooked meals, and some restaurants, like, scarce, but you know, still they had restaurants. But with the invention of fast food industry, you know, that sort of came into the picture when, you know, this modern society started to like really be cultivated. And so like the notions of what it means to properly nurture a child also evolved with that evolution of the fast food industry, which, I mean, drastically informed what it meant to like properly nurture a child. Because I feel like there's definitely this correlation between sustainability and health, when I don't think that's the case. Like, somebody can live 90 years but have cancer for 60% of it.
Mm.
And somebody can also live that long and also not have to live with cancer. It's like a lot of the byproducts of the health that we currently have is based on the decisions that we make. So it's like going back to, you know, really making it your decision how to treat yourself and how you want to look, and taking initiative, like what you did, Dawn, when you went to the doctor. It's like you made that decision, and then educating ourselves. Like, that's what I feel is like the most relevant part of this whole discussion for everybody to take away from it, is like, we live in the age of information. So that's the benefit that we have that past generations have not had the benefit of, is like, we have the internet, the greatest source of, well, relatively speaking, the greatest, you know, platform of information that we know, that we can reference if we're really wanting to like dig into why something is happening, or what we should do for ourselves to really get to a state where we're thriving as much as possible, you know, by our definition. And I think that that is really imperative at this moment, is to realize just how important it is to do your own research, and to really take yourself away from other people's notions of attractiveness or of standard of health. Because I mean, everybody has their own standard of health based on their genetic line. I mean, everybody's genetic line is a little bit different in some way, shape, or form. So we're going to react to different nutrients differently. We're going to metabolize things differently, and that leads to different outcomes in terms of, you know, body image and how our body processes things. So it's one of those things where I think that, for me personally, I think that everybody actualizing that sense of, you know, being our own detectives and investigating these questions that we have about our bodies and health are really important. So we have resources and we have people. It's just a matter of initiative and how far we want to go to really like idealize, like, there's, so yeah, there are those concepts of like perceived idealism and actual like idea, or, you know, it's getting as close to that sense of idealistic sense of health that you can,
Yeah, agreed. And I think we have to not make excuses about our conditions. There are some things that we cannot control. And I know a friend of mine went through the same thing that you did, Mo, in terms of lupus. It took them a whole year to figure out what was going on with her. And she was sick the whole year. Off and on, pneumonia. I mean, sick the whole year, took them a whole year. And there are some things I think in that regard we cannot control. But those things that we can, I think it's important. And I think when you talk about research, it is not going to find something that validates what you already want to believe. Research is looking at all of it. All of it. If you're going to look at, it's interesting, if someone introduces something to you, I'll just again throw out CMOS. Instead of going to look up just the benefits, look at the risks. Look at them both, right? Because both narratives are absolutely true. Several things can be true about the same thing. Right? And so it doesn't benefit you to just go and validate what your mind already wants to believe. That's not research. 8:30. That's not what that is. So I'm sorry. I want to let you jump in with the physical, and we're going to probably combine mental and emotional health. We're already at 7:30, guys. So you know that we are moving. But I don't want to cut it. I want us to talk if that's what we want to do. So if there's something you wanted to add, so in terms of our discussion of physical health.
Mo had her hand up too.
Oh,
okay. No, go. Yeah, no, go.
No, I just wanted to make a quick comment too, as far as the generational health, and we kind of moved into body image, because it all kind of ties it back into your health, your mental state, and all of that. Health and body image, two separate things, because you can have somebody who's very plus size, you can have somebody who's skinny, you can have them in the same diet. It's all about how your body, your metabolism is processing food, what is going on in your body. Just like Natasha, and you're a nurse, you can add to that, but just like a diabetic, if there's certain things going on with your body, you might process that food differently than the next person. So I think a lot of times we look at people and say, they're not healthy, or we assume that they're eating a certain way. And that's not always the case. I see people out eat me and I'm like, this girl over here smashing and I'm not even eating like that, you know what I mean? And I'm bigger than she is, but it's all about when you're passing down generational health, and as we're moving into the emotional part of it, we also have to remember body image and not being body shamed and having good confidence and being mentally secure that even if you are looking differently, and even if you're not fitting a certain frame and that you can come out with confidence, that you can feel like I'm still beautiful, that you get in the mirror, just like me and Saul had talked about what Wisdom had said one time about getting in the mirror. I talk to my groups about that a lot, about being in the mirror, talking to yourself and encouraging yourself, like, no, I'm beautiful. Like, okay, I might have something going on with my skin. I might have something here or there or whatever, but it's me. I'm beautiful, and embracing yourself and loving on yourself and just saying it's okay. I'm fine with me. Like, yes, I'm not going to make excuses to say, now I have something going on with my health. I need to transition. I need to do better. I need to start working out. But things are harder when you have things going on. Like Sol and I was talking about it, and he was like, well, what are you doing? Or, are you able to work out? Because he knows I transitioned my downstairs to a workout area. And I was like, it's hard. It causes a lupus flare up. So I'm down there, I'm trying to work out, and then I'm flaring up what's going on in my body. And then I didn't even know I had pressure on my brain, and I was doing squats. and stuff with my son. So I just had a lumbar puncture 3 days ago, you know, so trying to work through serious illnesses and pass on generational health is totally different. So I just wanted to add that. Where did Soul go? You're supposed to be next up, Soul.
You know, we are all improving. Listen, I go to the gym every day, right? And I'm not the fittest person in the world. I stand naked in the mirror a lot. And not because of the way not because I like the way I look. It's not that. It's so that I can point at the things on me that are probably always going to be where they are. Some things I have had to accept, like, yeah, that ain't gonna change. I work my ass off, it's not gonna change. And then saying that's okay. And I got a secret for y'all. Everybody that's strong ain't fit.
Mhm.
You can see all the muscle men in the gym. That don't mean that they fit
Ain't got no endurance
at all. And if they are aging, there are some things they can't, ain't nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's just some things ain't gonna work as well.
Bailey said, Bailey said,
I don't care how many supplements you take. I don't care how much exercise you do. Age is also one thing you can't do nothing about.
That's like glitch in the matrix type stuff when it arrives. You get there after you get all off, and then you're like, what the heck? Bro, this is not what I've signed up for.
So we're gonna move into mental health, but I wanted to give you a chance if you wanted to say anything in terms of any of the things that we discussed in terms of physical health. And I know mental health is you all's thing, so I'm sitting back and I'm learning from Mo and Natasha and Soul on this one.
I have so much I would want to add, but because y'all the health nuts, it's maybe best that I step back. More personal. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna start with Mike Rogers, then it with Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers said to start off is another part of being that look is surgery. A lot of these ladies with the dream bodies are surgically enhanced, and I think that roots down to the fear of our own abilities and not loving ourselves enough to listen to what our bodies are saying. One poison can be another person's potion, and I'm gonna use me as an example. The reason why I stepped away, I have a weak bladder, but I also drink water. I can't drink 8 bottles a day. I love y'all, but I love my bladder more. I'm going to use it. If I missed out on saying my comment on the physical part, then so be it. I'm actually living my part. So take care of your body and understand what works for you, because on the condition of bodies and images, you can't see what's going on inside. They can look healthy, they can smile. You don't know what's going on here. You don't know what's going on here. And it's proof that other countries that they're much bigger, like Tonga, or I'm just gonna stick Tonga because I can't pronounce the other country. They're big people, fat people, but they're in good health. They're in good shape. So it does come down to food and listening to your body, what works and what doesn't. I can't eat ice cream. I can, but I can't eat it in big spots because I miss what I'm supposed to be eating. So with that, I'm just gonna end it down. I'm gonna keep on time, and then I'm gonna end with Mike Rogers that said diabetes runs in your family because no one runs in your family. That's what I was laughing at when you asked me about comorbidities, and I started getting weak. I was trying to hold it in. He had said that just as you had said for me to say something. So that's why I was laughing.
That was funny, Mike. And I partially agree, you know, and I don't want y'all to think that we like, oh, all of this is flatlined across for everybody, that all of this is true for everybody. I think that's when it becomes very important to know your body. Mm-hmm. So somewhere that you trust and do a full physical of yourself. Understand, you don't need vitamin D if you don't have a vitamin D deficiency. And what will happen is if you're taking a lot of stuff because somebody told you should take it, and it's not really a deficiency in your body, right? If you don't have a potassium deficiency, you probably shouldn't take potassium because your body will stop producing it. Your body only needs a certain amount of everything that it has. So if you are adding extra stuff, your body gonna be like, oh, she got it. And it's not gonna produce it. So you know, just everything, there's so many things that can be true about the same thing. Everything you read is not necessarily the best for you. What works for me is not going to work for Natasha, it's not going to work for Mo, Bailey, or so. It's just not how it works. Okay.
That's why I say it's a journey, it's a marathon, not a race. And you just got to take it one step at a time. But to talk to Mo as far as, you know, your challenges with fitness due to your conditions, your journey is going to be probably, and I don't know like what your health goals are, but as far as if part of that is losing weight, and this is what I would say to my plus size sisters, because I can say this because I'm plus size. It is, I think it's good in this day and time that we have images out there that can make us feel beautiful. Because I know when I was growing up, there weren't those images. I come from a line of women who, in order to be beautiful, you had to be slim and everything. So growing up, especially when I got into like junior high school and stuff, and the weight started coming on and stuff, and just understanding, like we touched earlier, why weight, because some of us, like I wasn't born overweight, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't overweight all my life. It was acquired due to, I think, some trauma, poor, you know, and you know, it's a defense mechanism, you know. So identifying why the weight is there is important, but in your specific situation, research like anti-inflammatory diets, because that will help you work on your diet. Because once your diet starts to work for you, because there's a lot of people who lose weight out and don't step foot into a gym.
You don't have to.
Once you identify what foods work best for you and your condition, then those inflammatory episodes will decrease, and then you'll be able to start some low impact. You know, don't when you start, don't overdo it. Like just a slow walk.
I would never have you on weights. As a trainer, I wouldn't have you lift anything. I would have you use your own body strength.
Exactly.
Period. And I would never have you. We would walk, and I would only have you using your own body strength.
And that's what I was about to say.
Have to look at your diet and start looking at things that help to decrease inflammation.
And walking, I mean, I'm telling you, I have known so many people who have lost a lot of weight just by walking alone. They didn't step foot into the gym until they reached their weight loss goal. So walking
there's no, the goal every day should just be to improve. There is, you know, I see these people in the gym and they walk around. I didn't want to go at first because I was so intimidated. And I thought, well, that's where the beautiful people go. I don't want to go where the beautiful people are because I didn't feel beautiful. You know what I mean? That's so much bullshit. It's so, like, I mean, I'm glad I did and started kind of seeing like, man, you know what I mean? So it's not, we can talk about it more off. But I think something that Tasha said leads us right into sort of mental and emotional health. Those are our next two areas. And we're going to try to wrap this thing up by 8:15, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us because it's right about 7:40, quarter till 8 now. And it don't even seem like that time goes. Like to me, I'd be like, damn, is it almost 8 o'clock? What the hell? So emotional and mental health. And I think one thing that you said is that sometimes our physical is a reflection of hiding from trauma, and it becomes a mechanism to protect ourselves. And the first time I heard that was about 3 years ago. They were talking about childhood obesity and how it develops, of course, into adult obesity. And they were saying that children who have been molested a lot of them will end up being overweight because it's their way. They think that the weight will stop people from looking at them in a desirable way. So it will prevent them from being molested again. And it just, I couldn't, you know what I mean? So I think that moves when we talk about not body image according to what the world says is important, but how we see ourselves is a reflection of how we think. How we see ourselves is a reflection of how we think about ourselves. So I'm letting them kind of take the mental and emotional health, and that is really the ability to understand, communicate, and interact with your human experience, navigating through a machine that is always running. I thought that was so interesting. So for saying that, and the managing and expressing of what we feel without damaging of self, others, or ventilation of heavy emotions, how we view and approach emotions, rethought, accepting negative emotions as signals, not inherently evil. So anger, shame, pain, sort of learning how to interpret those things in a constructive way. And even if you can't see something, it doesn't mean that it isn't there. Stress leads to cortisol buildup. So again, all of these things are definitely interlinked with each other, and how the ill managing of emotion clouds judgment in relationships, finances, physical healing, and understanding our behaviors, perceptions, and resilience. So you all jump in, talk about trauma, talk about how we can pass healthier ideas onto our children in terms of mental and emotional health. Go.
Well, it mainly starts with talking.
Hello.
You don't talk about what's going on, really, because for the older generation, I can understand. It's kind of like it's reopening a wound that they refuse to open back up. And they don't realize that they haven't healed. They think they have healed, but they've just left a scar that they will not stop picking at. So it's come down to us, where it's just generation after generation after generation, where everything is like this. A bad shit, bad shit, bad shit, bad shit, bad shit. It was like, what's the point of talking about it? Let's just dance. Let's just drink. Let's just buy the new clothes. Let's get this. Let's go left. We've been so conditioned to the right, so we're just gonna go left. And so that's why I don't get mad with people who found ways to cope, because they're still there. Doesn't mean that I agree with them. Doesn't mean that I would do it, but I understand what that's like. Because I live on a personal note. I knew, even though I was dealing with friends at a high school age that did drugs, all types of drugs, weed, LSD, and so on and so forth. I already knew by looking at them and then looking at myself, I wouldn't do it, not because I thought it was high and mighty, because I understood that I would just use those as a way to cope with what I already felt I wanted to escape from. And you said perfectly, Natasha, we're surrounded by a culture of escapism. And it doesn't just have to be the Black community, it's white community too. This whole country is trying to outrun its past and try to make it seem as this utopia. And so when I think about instant gratification, that's literally what they've been wanting to do this whole time. Like, this is America the Great from the get-go. So that sense of entitlement, that sense of braggadocio has manifested itself in different ways in different sectors. So when it comes to our community, that same effect has happened to us, just on the negative spectrum. So I'll speak for me personally. I mentioned this on the last podcast about not being able to express anger. And I found out that my family on my dad's side, they're very angry. Not in the sense of they're just angry all the time because of trauma, which may be a part of it, but they're no shit taking type people. So me trying to understand that in my upbringing, where you don't show anger, it's actually feared to show anger, especially as a Black person, Black man, you repress it. and then that turns into depression, and then that turns into you not being able to show emotion. So when by the time you get to people who say, specifically women, show your emotions, like, I don't know how, because when I show emotions, it's a form of danger. And when you said about women, I can attest to that, and then also add to that to prove to that. There's a study that says that Black men nowadays are more willing to make themselves subservient or feminine or weaker just so they are not looked at by cops as another person to murder. They'll intentionally make themselves lesser in physical appearance or by demeanor or by the facial expressions just to avoid being the next George Floyd or Trayvon Martin. So that's definitely a correlation. It's survival instinct. If you know that you've seen all these people getting hurt this way, then you're gonna do what they didn't do to survive. So, but that's not, a key word is surviving. We're not thriving. And at this point, I think a lot of us are conscious enough to recognize what isn't working and what's been carried on. And we have the ability to talk to them now. Whereas opposed to generations, they didn't have time to talk. They couldn't articulate what was happening. They didn't know what was building up over these years to allow it to happen. So when I said,
do you think that they were in survival mode too?
Say that again.
Or do you think they were in survival mode too?
Of course, because that's all they knew.
And not really not knowing that they were feeling something, right? But not expressing it. I can specifically remember my grandmother saying things like, and she lived to be almost 90 years old, saying things like they were afraid of Muhammad Ali when he hit the scene, because he thought he was going to get all of us killed. He's going to get all of us killed. You know what I mean? Now, she was some generations older than Muhammad Ali, granted. But it was so I think not expressing it was survival for them, and not because they didn't it was kind of hushed, you didn't really express it in your house, but for I remember her saying we didn't want to look any worse than we already looked to white people. So we pretended to not have certain types of emotions, and now it's more survival, like, if I express this, I'm going to get killed. For them, it was that, but there was sort of this other thing of, that's why that whole what happens in this house stays in this house kind of thing. It wasn't because everything that was happening in everybody's house was happening. The same shit was happening in everybody's house in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? It wasn't about what it looked like to us because we were experiencing it. It was what it looked like to outside communities. They just didn't want to be judged by anything else. Yeah. So survival is not living. That's hard.
Come on, say that again.
Living.
Survival is not
living. That's a hard living.
I told a friend that. I told a friend that I was like, my prayer for you is to get beyond surviving and get to life. We have acquired that ideology, survival of the fittest, only the strong survive, that Darwinian theory. And especially as Black people, that's all we know how to do is survive. Even when we're successful, we're surviving within the success. So it's like, you can't even let your guard down then. No matter how much money you acquire, anything, you still surviving. As far as getting back to the mental aspect and health, I think this, we talk about the concept of comfort food. Food has become like a companion to some. It fulfills voids. So when we're nervous, we eat. When we're depressed, we eat. When we're detoxing from something, we eat. Socially, I remember a friend saying, as far as growing up in the church, everything's a sin but eating, which was ironic to me because one of we speak about 7 deadly sins, and one of them is gluttony. So, and so it's like, we have this more concept of the purpose of food, which is the purpose of food is fuel, and once we get back to that, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying a good meal. I had 2 weeks ago for the first time tried Culver's ice cream, and I'm intolerant, right? And so I don't know why I even ate it. I ain't even gonna tell you. When I tell you it was the best ice cream I've ever had in my life. And I mean, it was it was one of them. Like you taste it.
You was dancing to it. Yes. That's good food. You at the table like, hey.
We have to, like you said earlier, Don, change our whole mentality, know the purpose of what we're doing. It goes back to establishing more healthy coping mechanisms to deal with these traumas, because it's just not our culture. You said it right. Everything that was happening in the community was happening in the Black family, was happening in the white family. If we just had
family, absolutely.
If we conversations to know the skeletons in each and our, okay, let's touch on another thing, side note. So speaking of mental health. So you hear about the 600-pound life, right? So everybody enjoys this thing. So one day I decided to watch it. Talk about a depressing show. And I was disturbed. Because I'm like, how is this entertainment? There are people who can't even get up out of the bed, who are in abusive situations. How is this somebody's favorite show? You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, I was bothered by that, because I was like, I don't get it. I mean, it's a show it wasn't like extreme weight loss where they had they were really morbidly obese. They went through this program, they lost this weight. It was just depressing. But that population has been made such a mockery of, and it's so sad, just like Mo was saying, as far as shaming people. Know what has caused the weight to even be present. Sometimes it's trauma, sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, Don, a matter of hormones, especially for women. It's a lot harder for women to lose weight just because we are conditioned or designed to have more adipose tissue or fat tissue because we harvest a seed. Men,
that's right.
Yeah, men have a higher muscle mass, so muscle burns fast. So we're genetically just different. So remember,
but God made us God made us perfectly for procreation.
Right. And so you ever seen that
procreation?
Right. So it's like that one commercial for that diet pill, and it's like you show the lady, she takes it, or was a diet drink or something, and she goes down a bit, the guy takes it, and he's like skinny as a twig, and she looking at him like, what? It's just how it is. So as far as women is concerned, that's why I always encourage you, Don, because
she froze. Did she freeze, or is it me?
She froze.
Okay.
Oh.
Hello.
Go out and come back.
Yeah, she might kick her out and pull her back in. And Mo, I know that you have something to say. I want to say this really quick. When we talk about survival, that's what we're watching now in terms of, nobody's gonna like this, in terms of the angry white man. No, I know you're not gonna like that. You're not gonna like that. I know, because we sort of have this monopoly on anger. I got it. Right. And I don't know if it's Natasha, she'll come back in. I don't know if it's justified or not. There's going to be some people who say that absolutely isn't. But what we are watching manifest itself is a group of people who have been told that there is a privilege that they, right? Because most other people who are sort of committing, you know, these aren't the people that live in Beverly Hills. They got too much to lose. We're not talking about the dude that live up in Beverly Hills on the hill. Now, I'm not saying they kids and shit don't have issues. That's not what I'm saying. But they're not the ones, you know, they gonna send them, you know, to go get some help. These are the ones. These are Appalachians. This is true. These are people from West Virginia, and I don't mean anything by it. I'm being honest, right? These are people who are in the economic class that is more similar to us than to the privilege that they believe that they have possessed because of this color of their skin. So they have been lied to like we have been lied to. And what's happening now is they finally are like, these mugs lie. You know, so what we are watching manifest, they just are angry at the wrong people. We're going to have to figure out how to get them to understand that y'all mad at the wrong people. Because we didn't do it. We didn't do it. But that is a deprogramming that's going to have to happen for them. And so how it's manifesting itself is sort of like a petulant child. I am important. Yes. I am special. I am privileged. And all this time, we have generations of being told that, to kind of look around. Not only are you not, right? But you were also what it looks like, but you're also being fed a consistent narrative that is those people who are taking your jobs. That is those people. Poor people can't make you poor. That's ridiculous for poor people to be mad at poor brown people. That's stupid. But I can't say stupid on Facebook. Do not put us in jail. I said stupid the other day, and I almost got put in Facebook jail. But that's what we are seeing happening. And so I think that that mental health is we don't have a lock on mental health, y'all. There's no monopoly for us on mental health. It is present for us in our community because we feel like we've seen it for so long. We have, because that's where we live. That's not true. But to think that there is not a counterpart in which that's happening somewhere else in the world, and we don't see it, theirs is real to them.
Yes.
Because they see it every day, right? I just wrote a book about incest. And for so long, it's been this running joke that only white people inbreed. And y'all can try to say I ain't never heard that shit before. Y'all done talk about people in West Virginia, Kentucky, or inbreds. We call them out. But you all do know that it happened just as frequently in our homes. And when we get past this idea of this at some point, and that's why this movement was so important this summer, but when we get past this, we'll begin to see things that are more common. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some enemies in the world. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but generally, it's not the people who mad at each other.
Oh, you up all in my business.
Go on now. Go ahead, bro.
Okay. Go ahead now. A lot of people do not know. I'm an Appalachian poet. I'm from Middlesboro, Kentucky. So I am part of the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition under Pauletta Hansel. And I actually perform on the 23rd of this month. So make sure to catch that. It's on my page. And I will be talking about a lot of these issues right here, because in my book, Equals Greatness, I deal with incest. I deal with all of those issues in families that does not want to be talked about. And a lot of times there's not platforms where I can go and do a reading and talk about those issues. I've been excluded out of places. It's like, oh yeah, sure. Love your bio, love you. I want you here, but do not do anything about molestation, incest. I've been told, don't bring that here. And I said, thank you for the invite. No, thank you. Now I know you can't do certain things around children, things like that, But no, I'm not going to be muted like that. These are the things that we need to discuss. We need to get this out to the forefront and be an activist and let certain things be known. We've been silenced for so long, and if we can continue to be silenced, the generational curse, the generational trauma gets passed down and passed down and passed down. Because I know everything that happened, and then things can happen to me. And if I'm not talking about it, then things will continue to happen to my children. So we have to move past that. It has to be brought to light. And the whole region itself, in Appalachia, is the healthcare, the everything, the mental health. It's not being dealt with. It's not being treated the same way that we have here. So it's even lower that they can receive. So I can understand why things would happen and people would just come out and just do crazy stuff. And yeah.
And what I'm not making excuses for any of it, but what I think we have to understand is that, particularly in this Western world, right? Capitalism gave us the illness.
Yep.
All of us. It gave all of us the illness, and then it turns around and makes us feel bad for desiring the cure. Mm-hmm. Right? And so it has, in order, the basic definition of capitalism is that there have to be haves and there have to be have-nots. And so that's just basic, right? And so there are institutions set up to assure that there will always be have-nots. It has to exist. Okay. And so if we looked at the Western world in that way, right? Now, isms exist everywhere. You got classism in places, sexism in places. It exists everywhere. America is not unique in that regard. It's just not, again, usually what's present for us is what we sort of hold on to a little bit more. But when we start sort of dealing with the things that make us more alike, what we'll find is that we have bigger allies than we believe that we have. And we Black people, our existence here has been horrible. There's no way to wash that away. There's no way to whitewash that. It just is real. Mm-hmm. But it also is not our freaking cross, right? It's no more our cross. This is what I advise you all to do. Get in your cars, travel down to the river, drive east. Drive east along the Ohio River. And I hope that you're able to do it in a day when nobody's outside. All you can see are homes and how far apart people are, and where there are other food deserts. And the Black person is gonna say, I know ain't nothing but Black people live here. And then I hope what happens is that white people come out on their porches. That's what I hope happens when you go for your drive, or go a little bit north into Columbus, and right before you get into Columbus, cut east and go into West Virginia. Yeah. And go through the panhandle of West Virginia, in Warrington, West Virginia. You ain't got to go that far. It's about 2 hours from here. Okay. And so I say that to say that there are generational things that we are passing along, that everybody's passing along. And I think there has to be a time where we stop for a moment and not waste the energy that we saw happening this summer. I think it's going to be wasted last summer. I'm hoping that it's not going to be wasted. And find some, and there are other marginalized people in the world in this country who are starting to realize or starting to vocalize their marginalization. Because now in the last week, what have we been talking about? Asians and Asian marginalization, yes. Right? And it was difficult for me. I'm going to be very honest here, and I'm going to say a year ago, I remember seeing a ton of videos of how Asians treated Black women in their stores, their hair stores and their nail stores. And it became very difficult for me to reconcile that with what we are seeing now. But I think there's a different narrative that can be put on it if we choose to, right? And so some conversations need to be had with them. I don't think we should be angry and say, well, they're mad about it. It's been going on to us. But yeah, that's true. But what we should be saying is, hey, welcome to the fray. Come on over here. Let's have a whole conversation. Welcome.
And that's why building community is so important.
Yeah, it took you a while to get here. Come on in, have a sit down. Let's have a whole conversation, so that when these things are happening to marginalized people around the world, that we begin to have some empathy for those things. And then we find our strength in numbers, because the reality of it is we here. We are all here together. We ain't in Ghana. Guess what? Ghana is a capitalist too. They vote for their president every 4 years. We ain't going there. That's a whole nother segment. So go ahead. And we are, I promise you guys, we are wrapping up. We are not going to get to personal health. I don't think that we need to. I think we talked about it in terms of social interaction, growth and accountability, happiness. I think we've touched on those things. So I'm gonna let everybody have their last, few minutes of, and I think we lost Natasha for good. Her computer might have died, her battery, her phone. Have your last say in these things, and we'll be wrapping it up, people. Thank you, Facebook, for hanging out with us. Whoever wants to jump in, go for what you know.
I will say I personally feel like a part 2 might be justifiable, because I don't think we expanded too much. I know I kind of went off on a tangent, because this is literally, as she brung generational health and wealth, a lot of personal revelations came to me out of doing this. So I apologize if I didn't get the root to everything that we was going to talk about. And I think also the driver of
part 2
what we can do to get to that generational health, because we're saying a lot what we are doing, what can we do? So I think a part 2 would be appropriate. But what I was going to say is, to echo what Bailey screamed out on community, so many more instances of when we come together and look how familiar we are to one another, they don't want that. And I'm gonna give you another prime example. This is why hip hop, in my opinion, is now trapped the way it is today. Because when hip hop first started, it was to bring minorities together. It's to stop gang violence. It was actually bring gang violence together. How they talk about battle rapping nowadays and gangs coming together, they was doing that back in the day. And one particular time in New York, there was a bar, and they had signed a hip hop act and a hardcore punk rock act. In those days, they looked at them as skinheads, and they just thought, oh my God, why did they do this? This is
your sound.
What happened?
Oh no. You lost your
You're
whole
muted.
sound.
So no.
He's not muted, but I don't know what happened.
You feel the same way as I do. You feel marginalized. You feel you live in the same poor conditions and maybe a little bit nicer, but the fact of the matter is we just try and survive. So that's how you get hip hop the way it is, because they had that influence. So once again, the more we bring in community, then we'll be able to help one another, because one thing we need, communication is important. What we can learn from other people's diets, what they do for health, what they do for fitness, what they do for mental health, can easily be applied to us in our own way, and vice versa. So I just want to put that out there. Collaborate more, because not one person can know everything, and everybody misses a little bit of the conversation that is life.
You said her internet is hating on her,
Yeah.
Natasha.
Her
internet is hating, so she might not make it back in, which is quite all right. Any last thoughts? And you know what, we can definitely, because we really did not really dive into mental health or emotional health. I think we spent a lot of time on physical health. We didn't talk about spiritual health. So touched on it at the beginning, this difference between religion and spirituality, and wrapping it all up. We were talking at the end of it really is quantitative living versus qualitative living. And we really want to kind of pull that apart a little bit. So we were supposed to have a different podcast next week about climate and its effects on our psychological and physical. But we'll talk later this week, guys. We may want to pick this up next week. And I think it's going to be a vote for yes. Definitely want to promote it. What we can do is watch this one or refer back to this one so they'll know where we pick up in the conversation, and it'll help, I think, get a bigger audience for next week as well. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about it this week and make a decision. Bailey, don't want to push you out of your climate conversation, because I think that's important. We need to
Let's
talk
keep
about
it
that.
flowing. Let's keep
But
it
maybe
flowing.
should
We got to
move that
keep the
to
ideas
April.
fresh.
And I love the way we pivot. I love the way we pivot. We hit back on our heels and turn around. I love that. So Mo,
And
Bailey,
it's
last
empowerment,
thoughts.
You're gonna have to get through Darius on that one too, because he's co-producing that one, but I don't think he's gonna have any gripes. So,
but it'll
we'll
lead
definitely talk about it with them.
Environmental influences. So that'll we touch on that one. The next one, lead right in.
Oh, it'll lead right in. Yep.
I'm gonna give a little spoiler because I'm pretty sure that it was touched upon these notes. Hold on one second, because I did some little unpacking and like outlining of what I wanted. So yeah, I mean, one of the segments that I wanted to incorporate in the podcast was future-proofing ourselves and things that we can do now to make ourselves more energy conservative and environmentally mindful, which I feel is certainly tied into mental health and like feeling clean and feeling like you can exist in a space that is as clean as you can get it, to a relative degree. But I feel like environment is certainly tied to mental health in a very real way, because if we're living in a dirty space, we will most likely be living in a dirty mentality, and I don't think anybody likes that. So yeah,
We tackle the other parts and end with environmental influences and health from the second part of this one. It'll lead us right into the climate conversation. So I love what we are doing here, guys. And okay, I'm sorry. Sometimes I get a little too excited. Mo, any last thoughts?
Just as we're moving into mental health, just remember safe spaces, that you need safety in revealing like what is going on with you, and you need somebody that has the capacity to hold. Everybody does not have that capacity. They just don't have the energy. They might not have the time, just cannot have the mental capacity or even the heart to be able to hold. It may come in the form of counseling. It may come, I do just poetry circles where we just come together. It's a safe space and you're able to write through some of your emotions. It's a lot of different ways, and maybe we can get into some of those ways of how some of that can be released to get people towards that generational health.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. I love this group, and I tend not to try to love inanimate things, right? I mean, I love you all as people, but in terms of, ideas and things like that, I tend not to try to love those things, right? Because we can't necessarily take those things with us. But I think that this fulfills so much for so many people, and I am grateful. I know it fulfills a lot for me. I know that we each have our individual stories. It fulfills a lot for us individually. And I think one of the last things that we wrote on this is that what is good for the person is good for the one, is good for the collective. Okay, so I'm gonna take us out of here on that, and I'll say it again. What is good for the individual is equally as good for the collective. And I think if we keep that in mind, there are some gems that we will be able to pass on. And I don't want to seem like an idealist, but change the world. The world is changing whether or not we get involved with it or not. So we have some options. We can get involved with it and mold it the way we want it to look, or we can sit on the sidelines and let it mold us. I'm not really feeling the mold us part anymore. We've been doing that.
I'm
This
good
thing
on that
worked.
too. Yeah,
It hasn't worked. I mean, we've been doing that. Did it get us where we needed to be? Not at all. So I love you all for being here, Facebook and social media out there in the world. Thank you guys for joining us. This is Back to Love Movement, and we are signing off. We will see you in 7 days.
Peace.
7 days.
All right, let me
See ya.